I have an experiment I'm working on, and it starts with pouring resin into coaster molds. And there were some air bubbles, so I sprayed it with alcohol spray, and that makes the bubbles pop. And now it's time for some color, because I'm also working on a gecko at the same time, because can't do this without a gecko, right? And I swear those eyeballs are going to be the death of me. They keep moving. But here's the coasters. So I start off, I put some alcohol resin ink in these. And timing is so important on this. And I tried a couple experiments. This one I let it sit for like, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and let the resin do its thing. Then I also had some little, I don't know, keychain things. I wanted to try and experiment. And this is a metallic alcohol ink, and it really changes up the colors. Look at that. It's like magical. And I have some bigger molds coming that I'm going to try this with, where I think it will be more successful. I don't think these were deep enough to really do what I wanted to do in the end, but that is so spectacular. Love watching it. Added glitter to one of the coasters. And here's how everything's drying. I also did some worry stones. And this is after about 20 minutes. So what I'm adding here is a heavier sinking white resin. And it's in a piping bag, and you have to pour it very thin. The problem with this is it often sinks right to the bottom, and you end up with these white blotches. So my very first coaster project was a complete fail, because all I ended up with was white blobs. So trying to let things sit a little bit longer. And then here's the important part. After it's sat a sufficient amount of time, you pull a wand through the ink in a star pattern one way. And then once you're satisfied with what you've done, then you wipe it off in between each stroke, and you pull it towards the center. And you know, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm experimenting. I'm hoping it'll come out okay, but you don't really know until you pull it out of the mold the next day whether it worked or not. Sorry about the paper towel, but I had to dry it off in between strokes. So, and I did the same with this. And I ended up pouring 2 more because I wanted to experiment with leaving it a little bit longer. You have to let the resin heat up to a certain temperature before you do this. And I probably need to buy a temperature gun, but I was just trying to judge it by feel. So here's everything, how it's set up. It looks kind of neat. Stirring the worry stones, trying to make sure none of that. I did put some white sinking resin in some of those, making sure it didn't sink to the bottom. And now it's time to work on my little gecko friend. I love this part. I love watching the color zip into the mold. But here they are. They have set up, and now I have to stare at them. I'm telling you, it was a long night because I kept thinking about wanting to go out onto my porch to see how they turned out. So everything is very wet, and that might be that alcohol ink. I might have used too much. So hopefully they set up okay, but I had red alcohol ink all over my fingers. Well, this one came out kind of pretty. Again, I have some deeper molds coming in today. They're hearts, they're pocket hugs that I think this technique will work better with. So when those come in, I'll definitely be outpouring resin. That one's kind of cute. These are worry stones, so you put them in your pocket, and it has a little indent on the front. That one's pretty. I like that. And finally the last one. Again, very wet. That one had a blob of white. You can see how it kind of sinks down, and the back was kind of pixelated. Here's the little guys. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do with them, and they really didn't set up very well. They're very rubbery and wet. You can see the residue on my fingers. But look at those colors. Those are really pretty. Again, I don't know what I'm going to do with them, but it was a neat experiment, so I'll try it with a thicker mold. Look at that. You can almost bend it in half. Resin's supposed to be very hard. But I do love the colors. Very pretty. Okay, now for the coasters. I made myself wait. I am so curious how they came out. So, and again, these are also very wet. The humidity and heat here is just unbearable. So here's the first one. And you can see a lot of that white did sink to the bottom, but I don't know that it's going to be that big of a problem, and I'm going to try again and use a different technique. Maybe let it sit a little bit longer. This top one I let sit the longest, and you can see there weren't as many white blobs. So that white sinking ink needs to be a certain temperature. But it's very pretty, especially from the front. Okay. This one was one of the prettier ones. And I just don't know how it turned out this way. I didn't necessarily use darker ink, but the way it cured up, it came out really pretty. There goes Mio. Romeo tail. And this one was actually tacky on the surface, so it's going to have to sit and cure for a while. But this is the one with the sparkles in it, and I think it came out pretty nice. This is the only one that didn't have the white blobs. And now for the gecko, of course. And he was a little hesitant to come out of his mold. Maybe it was just too early in the morning to get out of bed. I don't know. That's kind of how I felt. But I was up at 6:30 this morning running out to pull resin out of molds, so that tells you anything about how excited I am about this process. You got to be so careful not to break off toes or tails or heads. But there he is. He's a cutie. A little bit of an over pour, but that's okay. That stuff comes off pretty easy. I like him. And here's the reveal. So these are the worry stones. Tried something different with. And this one's kind of interesting. Everything's very wet. The humidity here is not good for pouring resin. This one would have been much better if it weren't for that white blob, but it's hard to predict what that white resin's going to do. And here's the coasters. And I'm going to say I'm not mad about these. That's very close to what I was trying to accomplish. That's probably the best one. And this one's gorgeous too. Look at that. Yeah, that's pretty. And this one is still really wet. But look at those colors. Wow, that's gorgeous. And then here's the final one. Kind of looks like a slice of fruit, doesn't it? Yeah, we'll be doing more of those. And then the little ones. I don't even know what I'll use these for. It was kind of just an experiment to try a different technique. And they kind of look like a galaxy. But they're very bendy. They're going to need to cure. And then finally the little gecko. They always come out good. It doesn't really matter what I do. Little orange, yeah, red feet, sparkly belly, blue tail. He's a cutie. Alright, so what do you guys think? Was my experiment a success? Or was it a fail?